My mom took my brothers and I to an indoor water park a few years ago that was about 2 hours away from home. We were all really excited because none of us had ever been to a water park before, let alone ever went on a water slide. It was a long drive there, and I actually fell asleep about halfway there. When we got there, the first thing we did was get a bite to eat, because we were all hungry, and we were going to need some energy if we were going to be running around and swimming all day, playing in the water. We all had a lot of fun. We must have went on this one specific slide almost 10 times because of how much we enjoyed it. There was just one guy though that I couldn't help but notice. It just seemed like every time I looked at him, there he was, staring right at me. He had blue jeans, brown work boots, a flannel long sleeve with a green hat. He had a scruffy looking beard and long curly brown hair with glasses. He probably wasn't older than 50, I'd say. But I still remember vividly, and I can picture exactly what he looks like in my head when I think of him. I felt like something was wrong, but I didn't tell anyone because nothing bad had really happened yet. I should have told my mom though. That way she would have been more aware of the situation. Boy, do I wish I would have told her sooner, because maybe things would have ended differently. Anyways, my brothers and I kept playing with the every so often thought that I would get about the situation. Randomly the thought would pop back up in my head, and I would think about how the man was a weirdo, and I was wondering what his issue was. Within the span of 2 hours, I looked over at him probably 20 different times at least. There was only like one singular time he wasn't looking at me. So, to be fair, I was extremely creeped out. I began to wonder if he was even there with anyone, and started to think his only purpose in being there was to be creepy. My brothers and I ended up going to a whole different area of the water park, and the man seemed to have followed us, because I found him only after a few minutes of relocating to a different part of the water park. I finally told my brothers about the situation, and they said I should just tell mom, but I didn't want to. Not just yet anyways. About 30 minutes passed by, and we noticed that the man was gone. Maybe I was just overthinking, I thought, so when we left the water park area, we didn't tell my mom about him. We went back to our room that we were staying in for the night and changed into dry clothes from our swimsuits and headed to the arcade. My mom stayed in our room and gave us each $10 to spend at the arcade. On the way to the arcade, we ran into this strange guy who had been staring at us earlier. We had to walk past him to get to where we were going. We were in a very narrow hallway, and he was on the opposite side of us. As soon as he saw us, he stopped walking and just stood there and stared at us. He didn't say a word. My brothers and I were less than a 30-second walk from our room, so we all ran back to our room in our attempt to get our mom. Well, after a few strides of running, I tripped over my own leg and fell to the ground. Luckily, we were already near our room because the man tried to help me up and told me to come with him, and that he wanted to show me something. He even offered me $50 and bribed me with candy. My brothers went inside and got my mom, and she came out to see the man dragging me by my arm to who knows where. The man let go of me when my brothers and my mom chased him down and yelled at him, and then he ran away. We got a hold of security, and we later found out that he wasn't even supposed to be there at the water park in the first place. Security said they had no idea how he was even allowed in. To get into the park, you have to have a day pass, and he didn't have one. Also, on top of that, he had been previously banned from the water park completely, so somehow he must have snuck in. So not only did he try to kidnap me, but he was also trespassing. He ended up getting arrested because the police found him about a half-mile away near downtown from the water park. Apparently he is homeless and tries to sneak in there for warmth during the winter or just whenever he's cold. We haven't heard from him since, and we have no clue as to what's going on with him, like if he's in jail or what. I like to think that he is in jail though, because someone like him, that's a threat to society like he is, shouldn't be roaming around the streets. When I was a kid, I went to a friend of mine's birthday party. It was a few days before Halloween, and therefore it was fall. Her and all of her friends, along with me, were generally around the same age gap. I'm pretty sure I was 12 and probably technically the youngest of the group. All of the other kids were like 13 or 14 years old. I didn't know any of her friends either, so it was a bit weird for me at first. Although I didn't like being the youngest one there, it felt cool because I was hanging out with people who were older than me. We rode our bikes, scooters, played freeze tag, and danced around in the rain. After our brief moment of getting wet though, we realized it was time to go inside, because none of us had a change of clothes and we didn't want to get completely soaked. Besides my friend, that is. It was her birthday and she was literally at home, so she had tons of spare clothes. Her name is Janie, by the way. It was sprinkling rain for a good half hour or so while we were jumping on the trampoline. The rain started to pick up and eventually it would downpour. Jenny was upset because she wanted to keep playing in the rain outside, but her mom made us come inside and said that it was time for cake, presents, and dinner anyways. And then her mom told us that she had another surprise. My friend got tons of cool stuff for her birthday and she was extremely happy. The cake was great, just like any other homemade cake would be, and they made baby back ribs for dinner, which to this day I still wish I could go back for seconds. Not really though, because of what happened to me in their basement. For this reason alone, I never came back to Janie's house, and we ended up having a fallout of our friendship shortly after. After we all ate and Janie opened her presents, she wanted to play with the dodgeballs that she got for her birthday. The dodgeballs weren't like those big red ones you see in the movies. They were much softer and smaller, and more appropriate for us to play with inside, because these balls wouldn't bounce all around the walls. It was still raining heavily outside, so the only area we could do it was in the basement. Janie's parents had a really nice house. Her house was like over 3 times the size as mine was. They had this open area downstairs that was perfect for us to play dodgeball in. So we got our teams together and started playing. Only a few minutes after playing, we were interrupted by someone walking down the stairs, and they were making these weird laughing noises. Then the lights suddenly turned off as well. He introduced himself as Happy the Clown. All the other kids started screaming and panicking and running away. They all ran up the stairs and got past the clown. I think they all ran to Janie's bedroom, and the adults were all outside on the back patio, probably having a couple of drinks and hanging out or whatnot. But me and a friend of mine that I met at the party named Scott ran into each other, and we found our way to a spare bedroom of which we hid in. I remember Scott and I were legit terrified, and we hid in the bedroom closet of which we thankfully found. Luckily it was a walk-in closet because we could hide a bit better behind the clothes. The closet was really messy, and I remember grabbing blankets and clothes and anything we could find to cover ourselves up with. And then all of a sudden, completely out of thin air, there was this huge knock that came from the other side of the closet, which made me scream. We actually both stood up as soon as the clown opened the closet door. By the time the clown turned the light on though, Scott was gone and it was only me, alone with the clown. The clown tried to get me to touch his private parts and got very angry with me when I wasn't obeying. Then he told me to pull my pants down and that if I didn't, Happy the Clown would get very upset. As scared as I was, I still managed to yell at him and yell for help as well. From the spot he was standing, he couldn't see it, but I found a metal baseball bat that stood upright in the front right corner of the closet of which I was facing. I made no hesitation and grabbed it, and I hit him in the knee with it right away. He screeched in pain, and I ran past him, up the stairs, and found my friends. I told them what happened, and they all believed me. We all began searching for Janie's mom to tell her what happened. She was outside on the patio still with her friends and family and the clown. We all started telling her mom what happened and what the clown did to me especially, but she didn't believe us about what the clown did to me, and neither did any of the adults. None of them spoke up for me. The clown was already outside when we got there, like I said, and I'm sure he was gaslighting them all and telling them a bunch of lies and a fake story. Janie's mom thought we were making stuff up because we were scared and because I hit him with a bat because of my fear, and that was my way of trying to stay out of trouble. Janie's mom called my parents and made them come pick me up. My parents were livid when they got me, is they were embarrassed because they thought I did something wrong. My dad wouldn't even hear my side of the story until I got home, but when we got home, I told them everything, and yes, they believed me, every word I said. They apologized greatly and told me that they were sorry for not listening at first, to which I forgave them. I'm sure that my parents' minds would not have gone to that sinister of a length trying to figure out what happened. My parents called the police, but unfortunately they couldn't do anything. They didn't have enough evidence to prove what happened, and just like that creepy clown got away with something horrible, and something that would be completely unthinkable for a normal person to do. I'm sure he has many other victims who would do anything for the chance to be heard. After school, when I got off the bus, I left to go to my friend's house, Hunter. I was around 12, maybe 13 years old. We lived on an old dirt road, and he was my only friend in the area, and he was my best friend. We hung out at least 3 or 4 times a week at the very least. Sometimes we would hang out every day for weeks on end. He only lived like 4 houses down from me, but each house was separated by quite some bit of land, so his house was about a quarter mile from mine. And this was years ago, at least 8 years I would say. I went over to his house and we were trying to figure out what to do like we usually would. We were really bored, so we decided to rake up his parents' leaves so we could play in them. We made one gigantic pile and we would jump in it and wrestle each other in them. Boys just being boys. It was the end of fall and getting close to winter, so there were tons of leaves on the ground, especially at Hunter's house because he had loads and loads of trees at his house. We grew bored of that fairly quickly as well, and Hunter's mom made us a snack because we were hungry. She made us a grilled cheese. After we ate, Hunter and I decided we wanted to go ride our bikes. We used to ride our bikes all the time, and we had 3 different routes we used to take. This route we took in particular on the day that I'm talking about was the route that was the most fun for us. It was also the hardest though, and they both shared the same reason for being the most fun and the hardest. It was because of the huge hills we got to go down. That was the fun part, because we would go super fast and without even pedaling. But if you go down, you must go back up obviously, and it was a pain in the butt to ride up those hills. We were quite used to it though, so I guess it wasn't too big of a deal. It would still tire us out, but it was fun and totally worth it most of the time. There was this little culvert we used to stop by on our bike route when we felt like it, to take a break or just for something to do. So that's what we did. We stopped there and we were throwing rocks in the water, just bored out of our minds. But then Hunter and I got into a bit of an argument with each other and eventually it ended with him going home. I stayed at the culvert for a few minutes and waited for him to leave so I could leave as well. As I was heading home and right as I got on my bike, an older guy in an old beat-up white truck asked me if I needed a ride. I shook my head no and continued riding forward. Then he asked me if I had seen a phone anywhere, and that he was looking for a lost cell phone. I shook my head no again, and that's when he started yelling at me. "Hello? Say something to me, kid. Jeez, what's the matter with you?" he said. I started pedaling faster, and I wasn't very far from home. But the issue was that I was currently riding up the biggest hill that was on the road. But all I had to do was make it up that hill and I would be in the clear, because my house was just after the hill on the left-hand side. I ignored the man completely and he started threatening me and accusing me of stealing his phone. He told me to get into his car or that he was going to get a hold of my parents and tell them I stole his phone. I continued ignoring him, meanwhile I was scared out of my mind of the man, and I was in fear that he was going to hurt me. The more I ignored him, the angrier he got. He then tried to run me off the road and I drove myself into a ditch and I fell off of my bike and tripped over a large branch. Luckily when I fell in the ditch, someone was exiting their driveway and they scared the man off and helped me up. The man who saved me followed me home and helped me tell my parents what happened. The man drove off and we never saw him again. I never rode my bike alone again after that either.